All right, so hi everyone, this is Victoria Nalule, and today we have Miss Ailly Sheehama from Namibia, also a student at the University of Dundee. And today's webinar is more of sharing our thoughts or opinions with respect to the energy sector. Hi everyone, this is Victoria Nalule. And before we start, I'd like Ms. Ailly to briefly introduce herself. Ailly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Dr. Nalule. My name is Ailly Sheehama. I'm currently a LLM in Oil and Gas Law and Policy at the University of Dundee in Scotland student. I am from Namibia. I did my law degree there. And yes, here we are today discussing on this very important topic.
All right. And before we start, I had sent out a call for people to share their opinion about the African energy sector, and this followed a debate we held with respect to whether African countries are ready to bid farewell to fossil fuels. And I noticed your focus was more on the policy part of it. And just to read out our viewers, for Ms. Ailly, she was of the view that the political will to move forward should be shaped by public policy, which determines the long-term future of the energy sector. However, with any policy institution and governance challenges in designing an integrative policy exists, it is the author's opinion that the policy design requires planning to encourage coordination and coherence across sectors and policy domains. So I'll not read everything, but clearly your issues with respect to the policy implementation and policy framework with respect to the governance of the energy sector on the African continent. And I would like you to share more about your opinion with our viewers and other people who will be watching the video afterwards.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nalule, for this opportunity. Just to dive right into, when one talks about the future of the energy sector in Africa, you cannot isolate it from the current energy transition discussions happening now. Energy transition is a highly, politicalized issue for reasons having to do with both national and foreign policy. And concerning national politics, the future of the energy sector moving forward is manifested through public policy, which is essential for any transformation of the energy sector. It has an important role to play, and that is where the political will stems from. Whereas foreign policy is not necessarily related to the public policy requirements in Africa, which is a problem because policy design requires planning to encourage coordination and coherence across sectors and different policy domains. I believe that African countries must be allowed to shape their policy to meet the aspirations of their national, political, institutional, and economic circumstances. So it's just to say that political will should be based on a rather opportunistic plan that is codependent on the enforcement of the public policy requirements in African countries, especially with the dawn of energy transition, where Africa finds itself in a very awkward position as to where she stands in this movement. So integration and consolidation of the interest of different energy domains should be taken into account. I also believe that as a whole, Africa not only has enough fossil fuel resources, but also renewable resources to meet the regional needs. Hence, it is also equally important to note that government policies that are strongly influenced by foreign sustainable energy policies with the aim to move away from fossil fuels will not be sufficient to ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable modern energy in Africa by 2030 or even by 2040. I believe the overall aim to achieve universal access to modern energy while simultaneously contributing to climate change is the development of fossil fuel and the integration of low carbon sustainability energies as a strategic energy policy in Africa. So one of the very important ways we as Africans can develop our extractive industry is through project finance. And if foreign policies bottleneck that progress, that becomes an issue. And that is why I'm very passionate about my dissertation topic, which is based on project financing in Africa, concentrating specifically on the newly revised Equator Principles 4 with the introduction of transition risk, which will discuss on aspects such as the problems related to the application of the Equator Principle for transition risks, how climate change risks and the need for developing economies to expand their extractive industry on the other hand can be integrated, how developing an integrated policy can enable developing economies such as Africa to achieve sustainable development and future socio-economic prosperity. And just lastly, the principled challenges in designing, implementing, and evaluating integrative environmental policies to meet multiple energy domains. So that is just a brief focus on what my dissertation will be focusing on. But it is important to analyze any change in policy that may affect the energy future of Africa, because the further development of change in various energy policies is based on the shift in environmental policy initiatives such as the Paris Agreement, which aims to intensify regulatory activities of governments with the addition of national initiatives, of course. And just to close off, I want to resonate on your words, Dr. Nalule, on the presentation you gave on the energy transition debate in June this year. And the question that was asked is, what are we as Africans transitioning from? I think it's very important to ask ourselves this question. And the term you used was energy progression rather than energy transition. And I think it's a very important thing to note when we're talking when we're talking about steerheading our public policies. So we do have to take into account the political will to move forward as Africans should be based on that discussion on energy progression rather than energy transition. And because we share the same energy concerns, which is access to energy, but that needs a key element of integration with various foreign policies to work.
All right, thank you very much, Ailly. And I see we have some people who are attending, and I would like them to ask any questions. So are there any questions from our viewers? I see Zach, I've permitted you to speak. Do you have any questions to Ailly? I also see Mba Kavari. Questions? Okay, I think we have no questions, but I'll ask myself a question. So, Ailly, you're from Namibia and you raised very important issues with respect to the need to ensure that our policies take into consideration the global move to transition to a low carbon economy. And with the issue of political will, we are seeing most African countries are reluctant because first and foremost, as you might know, African countries, we do not emit as much carbon emission as other countries globally. So that's also a basis where like we still need fossil fuels to ensure economic development in our countries. So as a young person, what do you think we should do to get the political will? I know we need the policies, but what can we do to ensure that our leaders are actually into this energy transition debate?
In terms of if our leaders are really keen on working on the future forward, taking into account the social economic implications of Africa, I think it's a discussion that should be on the table to say that let's take into account energy transition. How can we as Africans accommodate our needs, but at the same time also know that there is actually a need, or the world is moving into a direction of energy transition. So I think as a young leader, we should try to advocate more. We should try to advocate more on the basis of how we as Africans, or the importance why the energy transition is not just important to the countries that are, lobbying for it, which is, Europe, for example, but it's also important to us because it will affect us. Because with the ongoing situation of energy transition, it will affect the market structure. So how are we able, we should be able to move in that direction, because once the market structure is affected, we should be able to have policies in place that will ensure that we survive this energy transition. And the good thing is that as Africa, we have the same energy problems, which is energy access. So we have a system that can accommodate us, we as Africans. But at the same time, not just taking into account the development of our fossil fuels, but also paying homage to the transition by taking into account renewables. Renewables in terms of ensuring that we have at least a mixed system, a mixed energy system that will allow us to sustain ourselves and eventually get there in the future, which is why I really resonate with what you said about energy progression. That is what we need. Progressively get there to the energy transition. But before that, let's focus on what we need right now. And that is proper public policy that will enable us to progress gradually to the oncoming energy transition in the future.
All right, thank you very much. And then my last question is with respect to your advice to the young people or young Africans and young professionals out there, because I know the future right now as it looks, we have a big role to play. Are we ready to take up these discussions to make the necessary decisions? And what would your advice be to the young people in Namibia, Uganda, Nigeria, Africa, and Europe with respect to the development of the African energy sector?
I think Africa is very much capable of, transforming our energy sector in the direction that we needed to go to. So with that being said, we are definitely ready as Africans to move forward, or rather we are ready as Africans to ensure that our future is in the right position for us. And my advice rather for the youth is we need to be more proactive in the future. We need to be more proactive in ascertaining our views in terms of what will work for us. And that's why public policy is important. When governments are taking into account public policy, they take into account what is it that the people need? What do we as African need? And that is access to energy. So if we can be more proactive in that discussion, it will allow the people in the relevant institutions to steer ahead that discussion in which is access to energy, and allow us to eventually get our policies in the right direction. But other than that, I definitely think we have capable individuals and capable institutions that will steer ahead that discussion in the right direction.
All right, thank you very much. Zach, I think you tried to speak.
Yes, thank you so much. I apologize for earlier. My technical situations are going through a bit of a problem when you asked me a question earlier. Ms. Ailly, I have a question. I wanted to ask your opinion on what you think the future is for African countries in two very different positions. On one side, you have heavily fossil fuel dependent economies like Nigeria. And on the other side, you have countries such as Namibia that aren't dependent on fossil fuels yet and have a very much renewable energy based energy system. And how the future of those two countries in light of the current energy transition, and just your opinion on how they would or should or could move forward, whether those paths will be different or whether there's some way for them to be taking the same kinds of steps, but just essentially your comments on the future for those two countries that are in very different positions regarding their current use of fossil fuels.
Thank you so much for the question, Zach. Just to go back, which is my main point, policy. We cannot change any current situation without taking into account policy. We also need to take into account that, for example, Nigeria and Namibia has different policies in terms of their energy. The governments, they structure their policy to allow them to give them room and allow them to structure the policy in terms of what works for them. So it's very difficult to say how they can come together. They can only come together if their policies are going in the same direction. If the policies are going in different directions, it's very difficult to say how they can integrate. But at the end of the day, My point is, we as Africans have the same energy issues, which is energy excess. I think that is what brings us together as a whole. In terms of future-wise, for example, a country like Nigeria that is very much in the industry, in the oil and gas industry, whereas a country like Namibia, which is, currently upcoming in the industry, you have to ask yourself, what is the energy policy looking like in Nigeria and in Namibia? Right now in Namibia, the energy policy focuses on taking into account renewables, but also this at the same time trying to develop its fossil fuel industry. And that is why in one of the papers that I did last year, it focuses on whether Namibia is actually applying or meeting the public policy requirements in terms of the energy sector. So that is one of the things that I researched on. And in terms of Namibia, definitely there are certain things that still need to be fixed. But one of the things that Namibia has now started to do is take into account renewables, but at the same time also allowing itself to develop its fossil fuels. And one of the biggest major steps that we as Namibia have taken into account to move forward to renewables is, I don't know if you have heard, but the new wind power plants that are in the pipeline right now. So that is a big step moving forward as to renewables in Namibia, taking into account obviously aspects of solar power, but I'm talking about renewables on a much bigger scale, which is wind power. So that is Namibia's direction. So in order for two different countries, the systems need to work together in order for them to integrate. So that's why I'm saying that in order since Africa has the same issues, which is access to energy, there's definitely systems that will allow for them to come together and integrate as a system, as one system. I mean, you take into account things like the energy pool in Southern Africa. Those are systems that can work together, or although different policies exist in different countries, they can integrate as one unit and work together to solve their energy issues that they face. But at the same time, they can also simultaneously, individually as countries, solve their own energy issues using that same policy.
Thank you very much, Ailly. That was really nice. And I like the aspect you brought in of regional cooperation, referring to the Southern African Power Pool. And just to also briefly answer Zach, like Ailly has mentioned, we have common energy challenges. And you realize that although some countries do not have fossil fuels, some countries now, I'll give the example of Nigeria, they have lots of fossil fuels, especially gas. And estimates show that the gas that is being flared in Nigeria can actually electrify the entire West African region. So if African countries can come in together, cooperate, and ensure they have the necessary infrastructure, regional infrastructure, then that means that even countries that do not have gas can still benefit from the fossil fuels. So thank you very much, Ailly. If we don't have any further questions, this will be the end of our webinar. It was supposed to be 7 minutes for the Sun opinion. And I'm so happy that you've been able to really discuss lots of issues and bring in the aspect of regionalism and the need for African countries to cooperate to solve the common energy challenges they face on the continent. So if there are no any questions, that this will be the end of our webinar, but I'll let you just say a few closing remarks for us, Ailly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nalule. This was a very interesting discussion, but that is why it's very important to have this type of discussions. And I think that is why my current dissertation topic is very important in relation to the way forward, especially project finance. We as Africans really do need project finance in order for us to develop, our energy sector. So that is one of the key things I'll also be discussing in my dissertation, and hopefully it will be available to on all my various platforms. And if anyone is interested in that discussion, once that is available, you can definitely read more on that discussion.
All right. All right, thank you very much. And thank you very much, our viewers. I wasn't really expecting people to log in, but thank you very much. And do not forget to share the video with your contacts. It will be available on YouTube. It will also be featured on our NGO called the African Energy and Minerals Management Initiative. So the video will be there, and I'll be sharing it on all my social media platforms. So stay tuned and have a lovely evening and weekend. Bye-bye.